What is up? Let's get things. Why did I do it that way? Did I not do it that way? Did I mess it up? What come up right from the beginning? What's going on? Okay, now
Making me busy here.
feels better. You're damn right. It's a recruiting hour. Recruiting never stops, even if we don't have a recruiting hour on a Monday because it's Memorial Day. That's just because the boss let us have the day off. Do not think that recruiting stopped. We'll prove it to you today because there's a huge hunk of official visits starting up this weekend. We'll give you the ones that really matter to you Texas fans, even though Texas itself will not be hosting a ton of official visits. It's those big targets going other places that we are going to hit today. Jeff Ketchum, the boss previously mentioned, he's taking care of some boss business today. That is Jason Sukumel. I am Chad Hastings. It's time for another recruiting hour. Pedon is jumping in with some hook'em emojis. Apparently, Corey is in Carthage, Texas. Hopefully it is not too hot and steamy in Carthage today, Corey. And Trip just has a big woohoo for us today. Trip on two wheels. So be careful. Hopefully you're not taking your hand off of handlebars to let us know that. Just keep it steady out there. If you want to jump into the specs chat, feel free to do that. Texas did add to the 2025 class today as well. Recruiting never stops. James Simon, the running back that Jason and Catch and those in the know have been telling you is probably going to end up at Texas. Yeah, he picked Texas today. We'll get Jason's thoughts on that as well. Jason, first off, how are you today? We're almost done with May, which means your June is about to be crazy. Are you prepared? Are you hydrated? Are you stretched? Are you ready to go?
None of the above. None of the above. Maybe somewhat mentally prepared. I'm lucky, though, because, as you said, and we'll talk about, a lot of schools are diving in headfirst this weekend to the official visits. Texas doesn't start till the first weekend of June. So I get a little bit of buffer this weekend, but that being said, we haven't even talked about this. Texas has an elite camp on Saturday, so I'll probably be down on campus Saturday afternoon and Saturday evening trying to grab interviews there. So not a big visit weekend in terms of official visitors, like you said, but like you also said, recruiting never stops. There's always something going on and something to cover.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Jason, I feel like in the 2025 class, when it pertains to Texas, we just probably should start with DeCorian Moore if we can. So let's talk about a group of receivers that'll take official visits. Let's start with DeCorian. Where will the talented Duncanville product and LSU commit be this weekend?
Former LSU commit, Chad.
I'm sorry. Right, Texas fans, my bad. Former soft LSU commit, now completely available. That's my bad. Where will he be?
Yeah, well, DeCorian, of course, the Duncanville, the standout number one receiver in the country. Man, one of the best receivers I've seen come through the state in a long time. There have been a lot of good ones, but DeCorian is up there with the best of the best. He will be at Ohio State this weekend on an official visit. He was there a few weeks ago on an unofficial visit. Ohio State's kind of surged there to get into that mix. It's been LSU, it's been Texas, it's been Oregon. Ohio State's now crept into that mix, and they're squarely in it. So they'll get the first crack to impress DeCorian Moore and his family on an official visit. Another interesting note about DeCorian, it came out today, Rivals.com's Adam Gorney had this. He will be taking an LSU official visit. When he first decommitted, Chad, he wasn't going to. That was pretty much dead. It was going to be Texas or Ohio State or Oregon. Right. LSU talked to his mother and said, hey, just give us a chance. Let's talk this out, see what was lacking. Maybe we can, fix whatever concerns you have. So he does plan on visiting LSU at some point. I don't think there's a date locked in for that official visit, but he will now be taking 4 official visits, starting with this week. Pardon me, as my phone goes crazy. Starting with this week to Ohio State.
Interesting. And just to refresh everybody's mind, do we have an official visit nailed down for DeCorian in Texas yet?
June 14th. So yeah, 2 weeks from this week he'll be in. And then it's let me make sure I got this right. Okay, Oregon gets the last crack, June 21st. We'll see with this new LSU development when that visit happens. How does that shake things up potentially? He does have next weekend open, it appears, if he sticks to his current schedule. But Texas right now is set for June 14th.
There you go. That's why you check out the recruiting hour. That's why you check out orangebloods.com, because Jason's always got updated info for you. Decorian Moore will be visiting LSU, but it's Ohio State this weekend. And Jason, I see the name Dalen McCutcheon's going to be there with him. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Another receiver, of course, another guy that Texas is bringing in on an official visit. I believe Dalen's coming into Texas on the 21st, if I'm not mistaken. But Dalen's, he's got 4 or 5 schools. USC's involved there. Florida State's a major player to watch there. But it's pretty interesting as we go through this list. We had a couple receivers that are Texas targets that are both visiting Ohio State. We got several targets, including receivers visiting LSU. We'll talk about offensive linemen visiting the same school together. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty interesting. Hey, my man Money B, our man Money B in the building. Money B always asked. He asked last time 2 weeks ago about Brandon Brown. Money, you're on my list a little bit, dude. I'm gonna tell you why. 2 weeks ago, Chad, you and I did the recruiting hour, and he asked about Brandon Brown. I said, Money, for you, I'm gonna go get a Brandon Brown update, and I did. I got Brandon on the phone, and I wrote about him, and we talked about him last week. Money B was nowhere to be found. Money B, what's up, dude? So I got that update specifically for you. But hey, we'll talk about Brandon because he's another guy taking a visit this week. So he's a guy we'll touch on here in a little bit. But yeah. 2 Texas receiver targets visiting Ohio State this weekend.
Hey, Money B was checking out the show. Even if he wasn't jumping in the chat, he was checking it out. He's there.
I had my holster loaded. I was ready. Like, come on, Money B. Come on with that Brandon Brown question. And it was never came up.
He's good. Jason, before we leave wide receivers, you mentioned it. Let's go with the single first. Andrew Marsh going to visit Penn State. What's your thought on Marsh right now?
Yeah, that was a bit of a one-off on this list, right? Because we're talking about Ohio State and a lot of LSU and Missouri. Penn State was just a kind of a random visit for me when I was going through that list. I was like, I'm not shocked that Andrew Marsh is taking the visit. That dude takes visits like crazy we talk about, but I was like, Penn State, wasn't necessarily expecting that one. So my thoughts on Andrew Marsh, he's a tough guy to read, man. I mean, I'd be surprised if Penn State wound up being the choice in the long run. That's a long way away from home. But he is real close with his mom. She plans on moving wherever he goes. Now, if our database is accurate, this will be his first time to ever visit Penn State. So sometimes those unofficial visits don't get updated as accurately. So I don't know for sure, but he's got Oklahoma on 21st. I'm showing a Kentucky official visit. He's supposed to visit Texas on the 14th, USC, Washington. I already visited Washington, I believe. A&M will get a visit. I'm almost sure of it. So tough guy to read still with Andrew Marsh. He's not going to commit until I think it's November. Is that when Veterans Day is? I can't even. October or November?
Yes. November 11 is Veterans Day.
Okay, November 11th. Thank you. So that's the plan, is to commit November 11th to honor the military and his late father. So long way to go into Andrew Marsh sweepstakes, but yes, he is scheduled, according to our database, to visit Penn State this weekend.
Interesting. All right, we'll get to the Baton Rouge crew because there are a few of them to get to. First off, shout out to Mike and anybody who is tailgating at Q2 with Mike this afternoon. That sounds like a good afternoon, Mike. Take care. Enjoy the festivities, and I hope everybody is safe and sound over at Q2. Jason, when it comes to LSU, since we started with receivers, I'll finish off with those 2 guys, but there's a couple other big names as well. But French and Lockett both jump out to me. Interesting. Now I've got these soap operas in my head, thanks to you recruiting monster. I'm thinking, because I know Texas fans want Decorian Moore and French and Lockett. So I know Decorian Moore was an LSU commit, but now he's not. And then Lockett and French both end up going to Baton Rouge on the same weekend. So it's just all kind of mixing in my head here. But talk to me about French with 2 Fs and Lockett going to Baton Rouge.
Yeah, you can get pretty dramatic here if you want, because is it a big conspiracy? Are they visiting together? And now Decorian's going to go back and visit LSU. Right. I don't think so, but hey, if you're a Texas fan, I think you'd almost prefer that Jamie French and Khalid Lockett, didn't visit together. You don't want those two getting too chummy on the LSU visits, right? So I don't think it'll be a huge issue. I keep getting asked this, Chad, like, do I think Texas leads for Decorian Moore? Yes. Do I think Texas leads for Jamie French? Yes. I've got Texas as the leader there. Do I think they lead for Khalil Lockett? A little harder to read, but yeah, I would put Texas probably at the forefront, maybe slightly in front of everybody. If not, they're certainly tied with maybe one or two others. Okay, but do I think Texas is going to get all three of them? I don't know, man. Those guys are saying the right things and like they want to play together, but at some point they're also going to look at it and say, hey, there's only so many footballs to go around, right? So I've kind of gone on record, I've gone on record as saying I think Texas leads for all three of those guys individually, but I think they'll get 2 out of 3. I think something's going to change with one of them, and that guy's going to be like, you know, I don't think I'm going to go ahead and slide off to this other school where I can be, wide receiver 1A in this recruiting class. But both those guys, yes, are visiting LSU this weekend. Obviously, they're both going to visit Texas too in the coming weeks. So, you know, you just need to hope that they don't come out of this weekend. I mean, they're going to talk highly of LSU. It happens every time. But, you need to hope that they don't come out with LSU having just a ton of momentum this weekend. And then Texas can maybe just kind of hold serve when they get those guys on campus. And I'm looking, if I look at Jamie French, he's got LSU this weekend. He's got Tennessee on the 18th of June. The Texas visit is on their big weekend of the 21st. And Khalil, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if you can let me pull up his profile, I believe he's also coming in on the 21st. So Texas will get those dudes on campus. Yeah, Khalil has Florida State on the 14th. And Texas is on the 21st. So Texas will get both those guys on campus too.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately, they won't get DeCorian Moore with them because DeCorian will be visiting the week before. But, Texas recruiting a lot of times is about serve and just counter, and I mean, just serve and volley here and get back and forth. And you got to counter what LSU does this week. You got to counter what Ohio State does. So, Texas will have its chance to kind of counter punch that weekend of June 21st. But it is interesting, both those guys going to LSU on the same weekend, in addition to a couple other guys that I'm sure we'll talk about right now.
Yeah, and one of those is a Texas commit, and that is Brandon Brown. You mentioned Brandon Brown when we were talking about Money B. So Brandon Brown and then Zion Williams, the talented defensive tackle out of Lufkin, correct? Zion is Lufkin?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They will both be going in. So 2 big-time D linemen there. So give me the thought of what, if I'm a Texas fan and I'm a little concerned about, dramatic stories. He's going back to Brandon Brown. Yes, he's a Texas commit, but he's going to go to Baton Rouge. That means he's going to see Bo Davis. That means he's going to hang with Bo Davis. And we know there was a relationship there at one point. So how worried would you tell a Texas fan to be?
I'd be pretty worried. And I'll tell you why. I talked to Brandon, thanks to Money B for giving me a shove in the right direction. I talked to Brandon last weekend, and I can't remember what day it was, but he did tell me he was supposed to visit Florida this weekend, right? Well, he changed that with LSU, and Florida's, we'll see, but he said they're kind of out of the picture. He said it's mostly obviously Texas, Tennessee, USC, and LSU. And I asked him, I said, hey, if there's one school that if I'm writing my story on you, Brandon, I say, he's still committed to Texas, but this school is the biggest threat. He said, hey, it was LSU. It's LSU. That's the biggest threat. So, yeah, so him going to LSU this weekend on an official visit, yeah, you should be worried. Now, Brandon's done a good job of just kind of staying committed and, not hitting the panic button when Bo Davis left. So I don't think he'll come out of this weekend. And again, dude, we're talking about teenagers here. He committed to Texas sight unseen. So Brandon, he could do anything at any time. But the fact that he stayed committed to Texas, and he's already visited LSU unofficially, I don't think he's going to go to LSU this weekend and flip his commitment or anything crazy. Could happen, but I'm not expecting it. But might he go down there, or might LSU plant a big enough seed this weekend that he then goes and visits the other schools, including Texas, and then says, you know what? I think LSU is the one I'm feeling. And Bo Davis, I still want him to be my coach. Yeah, this weekend could be the one that ends up flipping him if he ends up flipping. The good thing is he does like Kenny Baker. He's talked highly of Kenny Baker when I spoke to him. Texas, of course, will get him on an official visit. So assuming he doesn't just go to LSU, flip his commitment, shut everything else down, that would be a big shock to me. Then, I think if you're a Texas fan, I'd still bet on Texas right now, but boy, this weekend is going to make things interesting.
That'd be big. Brandon Brown and Zion Williams in that group going to LSU.
Zion's another guy that I think Texas is the team to beat. Now, I mean, This is when things get crazy. We're getting into official visits. This is when the pendulum starts just swinging, taking these dramatic swings, right? So I have Zion as a guy that I think Texas will land, but hey, these things can move in a hurry with these official visits. So this weekend will be big.
Yeah. When it comes to that Brandon Brown news, Money B says, that is not the news I was expecting, Jason. Remember, Money B, you can't ask for just good news from Jason. He's just going to give you the news. He's going to give you what he's hearing.
Well, I kind of figured he would be visiting LSU at some point. So I wasn't totally shocked when he told me that. When he said, hey, I'm kicking Florida out and putting LSU in and kind of not really looking at Florida, that was a little bit of a surprise. And one more LSU visitor as I look at my list, Caleb Chester, the defensive back. Was a guy that you and I've talked about, Chad. I wrote about him. I've got my Texas Future cast in for Caleb Chester. I think he's a really, really good player that people don't pay enough attention to, a big, long cornerback prospect. But he'll be at LSU this weekend. Texas will get him on campus. He's got A&M's heavily involved there. So still time for some movement in that one too, but LSU gets the first crack this weekend.
If anybody wants to jump in that Specs chat, we will take a super chat on this Wednesday afternoon. If you want to jump in, we got over 330 folks in. Let's let Specs have their moment. Specs brings you the chat each and every day. Here's Lisa.
Specs same-day delivery can save the day with our Specs app or online shopping. From world-class wines to hard-to-find spirits and craft beers to gourmet foods, delicious snacks, and spectacular sweets. It's Specs. Cheers to savings.
And by the way, thank you to all the subscribers. We cannot get to 8 million until we get to 19,100. And now you've helped us do that. Thank you very much. We are still climbing one subscriber at a time. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and getting your notifications to the YouTube page. Remember, it is free. It is free to do all three of those things. We appreciate it, and we certainly will keep you updated on those numbers. Alan jumped in and just told everybody to smash the like button. Thank you, Alan. Remember, you can always take it back. Just go ahead and assume it's going to be great. It's Jason Sukamel talking recruiting. How could that be bad? Just assume it, like it, and if for some reason you want to get squirrely later, you could unlike it. But just go ahead. Like it anyway.
Once they like it, they're locked in.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true. I lied. You can't undo it. It's totally that's the only way to do it. We got some other chats we will get to, but Jason, outside of the group we have mentioned, I feel like we hit a lot of big names there, but there are still big names. What would be the next one that we need to throw out in terms of these May 31st visits?
Yeah, if I'm looking at this list I've put together, we're still a lot to cover, but I'm just going to start with the guy that I've got at the top. Would be Riley Pedon, the linebacker out of McKinney, and Riley is visiting Florida State this weekend. He likes Florida State. I mean, he wouldn't be visiting there if he didn't like him. But I mean, it's not just like, hey, I want to just take a trip. I mean, he genuinely is interested in Florida State and some of these other schools. I still think Texas is the team to beat there. I think Texas will wind up getting Riley Pedon, but and he's a guy that, boy, he just moved up to number 33 in the nation on Rivals.com. They updated their rankings today, Chad. So, I mean, he made a big jump. I don't remember exactly where he was before that. But he's got Florida State this weekend. He'll be at Texas on the 14th, Southern Cal on the 21st. He was in the 70s before that. So he made a big jump, almost 40 spots today. And he's now in 5-star consideration. He's in that kind of discussion. But Florida State, I mean, don't sleep on Florida State. Listen, my pick is on Texas. I feel pretty confident in that pick right now. Actually, I don't have a future cast put in for Riley. I should probably do that. But my pick will be Texas for Riley Pedon. But don't sleep on Florida State. He's got a good relationship with that staff. He likes that program, likes that coaching staff. And he's a guy that, even though I think most of the signs point to Texas, I think Riley's a pretty independent, pretty intelligent kid that he might go somewhere like that and just be like, you know what, this just fits me. So this will be an interesting visit to watch with him going down to see FSU this weekend.
All right, Jason, you said relationship with coaches. I feel like now we need to go to these offensive linemen because you have been talking about the relationship building that they're doing at MIZZOU for a while. These two of these big dogs we're talking about, Michael Fasusi from Louisville and Lamont Rogers. Let me see if I can do it. Lamont Rogers is he Mesquite Horn?
Yes, sir. Good job.
Come
Yep.
on.
Yeah.
That's right. All right. They're both headed to see Coach Drinkwitz, but it's probably that O-line coach that needs to get some credit. Apparently, he is a hell of a conversationalist.
Yeah, and I looked him up. These guys have both mentioned to him to me by name, but before I cheated, before you and I came on the air, I looked him up, and I'm like, who is this cat that they keep talking about? Well, Brandon Jones is his name, and not the former Brandon Jones Texas A&M battle that we all talked about for years. But he did coach. He was at Houston. He was kind of under that Mike Leach coaching tree. He's coached with Kingsbury and all those disciples of Mike Leach, if you will. So he's got ties to the state of Texas. And those dudes, I'm telling you, man, Lamont Rogers and Fasusi just rave about him. And they've both told me on the record repeatedly, more than once, they have the best relationships with the Missouri coaching staff. And that's not to say they don't like Texas A&M and Oklahoma and obviously Texas, but they just love that Missouri coaching staff, including their offensive line coach. So Lamont Rogers, I mean, when I last talked to him in person, and we're going back, it was in March, I think. So it's been a couple months since I talked to him in person. He flat out told me, hey, Missouri was the team to beat. That was his leader. Now, is that going to hold true after he goes through a bunch of other visits? We'll see. When he gets there and sees the shiny things that, Texas has to offer and NIL opportunities, and Missouri's got decent NIL opportunities too, but he's got Oklahoma, he's got an SMU visit, he's got Texas, he's got Texas A&M. This is Lamont Rogers I'm talking about. Is Missouri going to be able to battle and stay in that race long term? We'll see. But coming into that visit, I mean, Missouri is a very strong player for Lamont Rogers. Fasusi, we still think Texas A&M, Oklahoma, those schools will all get him on visits in consecutive weekends. You got A&M on June 7th, or actually June 6th. They're bringing him in on Thursday. Oklahoma, June 14th, Texas on the 21st. But he likes Missouri a lot too, man. He's visited there at least once, I think maybe twice unofficially. So, just a lot of relationship building. You talked about a lot of trust there. But I don't know, man. We'll see how they relate when they get to Columbia, Missouri. And I don't know if you've been there. It's a small campus feel. And but those coaches do a really good job. So they put themselves certainly in a striking distance for both those offensive linemen.
And then both of those guys will come to Texas. I'm showing Rogers on the 14th, Williams on the 20th, Fasusi on the 21st.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Yes, that's right. And Fasusi, those are Texas's two biggest weekends. So, and I think as it stands right now, Texas is scheduled to be Fasusi's last visit. But listen, I love Mike. He's my dude, but he enjoys the process, man. So I could see him scheduling something, in the fall, something if he decides to hold off and not commit this summer. So, but potentially getting his last visit for Michael Fasusi, I think is big for Texas.
All right, let's roll through some chats here, Jason, and then we'll get back to more guys on this list. Some people wanting to know things. Chad says, do any of the current Texas commits have a chance to reach 5-star status? You mentioned that the recruiting had rearranged itself. Anybody stepping up?
Yeah. I'm looking at their list, and I don't really think any of the current commits have a chance to get that high. I mentioned Riley Pedon if they get him.
Mm-hmm.
KJ Lacey still has a chance. He's still hovering around. He's at 25. I mean, honestly, I knew I knew Rivals was going to drop him a little bit. They only dropped him from 19 to 25. So if he can maintain that position, he certainly has a chance to get to 5-star status. That's a little surprising. That's the first time I've seen that, Chad, as we're talking this out, because I know I talked to some of the analysts who do the rankings, and I thought they may drop him a little bit more than that. So, but if Texas can reel in Riley Pedon, if Lance Jackson can continue to make moves up the rankings, he would have an outside shots. But I would say of the current committed guys, KJ Lacey would be the most realistic potential 5-star guy.
Chad, thank you for that. And we will get you an update on Mr. Jackson and his ranking before the show is done. Thanks to Chad for that. How about, do we end up with a top 10 or top 5 kind of class?
I think it's going to be top 5, Chad. I'm going to go ahead and say that again. I mean, if Texas gets the guys I think they will, including a DeCorian Moore, including a Michael Fasusi, and listen, there's still work to be done. They've still got to close the deal on some of these guys. If they get a Riley Pedon, yeah, I think this is good. This is looking to me like another top 5 class for Texas.
All right, Jason, this is how you know you got first world problems. Mark says, going to be honest, seems like Sark's more focused on wide receiver than other positions. I really want him to back off. Feels like we have 15 on the roster already. Jason, does Texas have too many wide receivers?
Oh, hey, listen, a lot of those guys are not grad transfers, but through the transfer portal, or you're going to be here for a year or so and then be gone. So, they don't have a lot of proven young depth. That's why they had to go so heavily into the transfer portal. I mean, Sark said, hey, we got a couple guys on scholarship, DeAndre Moore, Jonte Cook. Now, they did bring in a fairly sizable recruiting class last year, but no, man, listen, if you can get guys like DeCorian Moore and Jamie French and Khalil Lockett and some of these other receivers they're targeting, you just keep bringing them in and keep rolling them in and let the cream rise to the top.
Yeah. Mark, go watch those highlights on Khalil Lockett. You're going to want them all. Trust me, you're going to want them all. This is Jose jumping in. Jason, not to bag on Chad's Aggies. Thank you, Jose. But are there any current A&M commits that UT actually wanted?
Let me pull up A&M's commit list. A&M's got 13. I mean, Texas would have taken Kobe Sellers, the offensive line. I'm jumping ahead of myself. The cornerback. Hey, they're still bringing Jonte Newman, who's a A&M commit, in for an official visit. He's an offensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
Landon Rink, they kind of flirted there, but kind of went their separate ways. Same with Tyler Thomas, who just committed to A&M yesterday. Texas was recruiting him pretty heavily, but suddenly Texas's offensive line numbers are pretty tight. So I don't think that was really going to work out. So there's a couple of them, Jose, that I would say, Texas would probably take, but nobody that I think Texas is, with all due respect to A&M's class, I don't think there are guys that Texas is losing sleep over. It's not like a Michael Fasusi has committed there, or, some of these other big-time guys that are what I would consider can't-miss guys. Kobe Sellers is a really good player. Texas definitely would have taken him, but they've got other cornerback options they're looking at too.
Jose, thank you for that. One other quick one here, Jason, and we'll get back to the discussion. It says, Jason, how does the state of Texas only have 4 players in the top 50 for 2026? Seems like a low number for the state.
Yeah, and I don't have those rankings pulled up, but I remember when they first released the rankings, I agreed with 420 because the highest ranked player was from the state of Texas was barely in the top 20. I'm like, whoa, where does this happen? So, listen, I'm going to make a bit of an excuse. I think maybe that'll self-correct a little bit and just kind of peek behind the curtains. Rivals did not have a Texas regional analyst for about 4 months there, I think it was. About 4 months, 3 months or so. Those are the guys who go out and see these people. I mean, I see them and I watch their film and I talk to them, but I don't get involved in the rankings. Ketch does his Lone Star recruiting rankings, but those are completely independent of the Rivals rankings. So we now have 2 analysts based in the state of Texas. So they're going to be seeing a lot more of these guys. I think some of those guys will rise up. There's some really good young offensive linemen in the state for next year. I think you'll see some of that self-correct. But 420, when that first rankings release came out, I was like, damn, where's all the Texas love? But I was like, okay, maybe it's just because they haven't been as thoroughly evaluated, but that's certainly changing this spring.
420, we appreciate it, and we will get back to the discussion. Again, we're looking over the list of official visits for some of the biggest targets that Texas has. Jason, before we get to some more of those, I want to get your thoughts on James Simon before we get too far into it. He was the addition to the class today at the running back position. I know this one didn't shock you at all that he picked Texas. So let's break him down a little bit. Young man out of the state of Louisiana is the latest commit. What do you think about him?
Yeah, Shreveport Calvary Baptist Academy. And it's funny, Chad. Do you know when I wrote my James Simon commitment story? I've had it in the can. Well, you remember I went to Vegas a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah. Is it a week ago?
No, it was longer than that. I went to Vegas. I don't even remember. Was it first week of May. I think it was like May 4th or something like that. But we had a crazy early flight, my wife and I did. So we get to the airport and like, man, we flew through security and everything. I was like, you know what? I got like 2 hours. I'm sitting here at the airport. It's like 4 a.m, right? So I typed up a James Simon commitment story from the Austin airport. And I remember I loaded it into our admin for our website. And I said, hey, I don't think he's going to commit this week, guys. I told the Orange Bloods crew, but I was like, in case I'm stumbling around on Vegas drunk or at a craps table or something and he decides to commit, here's the commitment story. But that one's been a long time coming. And he did say today, he said, yeah, he kind of knew like right after that spring game visit when he came up to Texas for the spring game. Well, literally when he was leaving the field house after the spring game, I was there, as the Orange Bloods crew likes to say, stalking recruits, which is kind of true, sadly, but I was stalking recruits, and James Simon came out, and this is me and a couple other media members. And, we interviewed him, talked to him. Hey, what'd you think about the visit? And I said, James, do you have any official visits set up? And he said, yeah, I've got Texas for June 21st. He goes, I haven't put that out, but I'm going to put it out soon. Texas, June 21st is my official visit. Well, then we get to talking, and he says, yeah, I'm probably going to commit in May. And I said, well, how's that work if you got a Texas official visit? And he goes, yeah, I'm only visiting the school that I'm going to commit to. And I go, well, James, you already got a Texas OV set up. So and he goes, well, and then he kind of is like, yeah, I might have to change that if I go somewhere else. We're like, all right, dude, it's pretty obvious what's going on here. But so that one's been in the works for a bit. But yeah, I really like him. I mean, Rivals has him as a 4-star player. He's not in the Rivals 250 or anything like that. I think he could be. He's super productive, plays on a state championship winning program. He doesn't play against like 6A competition in the state of Texas, the equivalent of that. He's at a private school, but he does what you want him to do, man. He dominates the competition. He's a good receiver. He can run with some power. He's not afraid to lower his shoulder, but he's really elusive, man. He's got a really nice combination. I mean, he can make you miss in tight windows and good lateral movement. He's got good acceleration. I just think he's a good, solid, all-around player. I'm going to say the same thing about James Simon as I talk this out. Everybody used to ask me about Jonathan Brooks. And what did I think about Jonathan Brooks? And Chad, if you were on Orange Bloods several years ago, I was the leader of the Jonathan Brooks fan club. I was like, you guys are undervaluing this guy because he plays at a small school. And I beat that drum. I said, I think he's one of the best backs in the country, if not the best. And then he goes, lo and behold, that's one of the few that I actually got right. Okay. Well, James Simon, I'm going to say the same thing about James that I said about Jonathan Brooks. He's not Earl Campbell. He doesn't run over people like that. He's not Jamal Charles. He doesn't have that kind of speed. He maybe isn't quite the receiver that Bijan Robinson is. But you know what? There's not anything that he doesn't do pretty well. He does everything across the board pretty well. And like Jonathan Brooks, he's an awesome kid, dude. That's one thing I loved so much about Jonathan Brooks. He was just an awesome kid. James Simon's the same thing. I actually talked to James on I think it was Monday. No, I'm sorry, Sunday of this past weekend. And he told me then, he goes, yeah. I said, hey, dude, I've got my commitment story ready. He goes, yeah, good call, blah, 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 blah. And, and I just told him, I said, hey, man, you and I've talked a few times. It hadn't been a ton, but I really respect the way he's handled himself. I told him this, and I hope he continues to operate that way. Just very mature, very appreciative, very polite, just a good quality person. And, as weird as that sounds, I know that doesn't matter in terms of how high you jump and how fast you run, but Texas seems to have success with those kind of people. Bijan Robinson, Roshan Johnson, Jonathan Brooks. I mean, those are the guys that have come to Texas in that running back room in particular and had success. Hey, James Simon fits that mold. So he's a guy that I really like.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of Longhorn running backs and good dudes, you see that story on Bijan Robinson donating $300,000 to help homelessness in Austin?
Wow. I haven't even seen it, honestly.
Good grief. Not a shocker if you know Bijan at all. But
Bijan, when he was in high school, he didn't do a lot of interviews. I mean, and when you had to catch him in person, and he was an awesome interview when you talked to him. And I mean, obviously just an incredibly polite person and everything else. But I got to know his coach really well at the time. And his coach used to tell me, he goes, man, you're going to love Bijan. He is the best running back in the country, but he's twice as good of a person. And we're seeing that reflected even now that he's in the pros. I mean, the guy dude, I watched him at the spring game, and all these people come up to him. And even as he's leaving, and some guys just kind of get a little tired of it and taking pictures and constantly having autograph requests. Pedon, dude, he is constantly smiling ear to ear, and just it's great, man, because he knows that makes somebody's day, somebody's year. This 8-year-old kid's going to be telling that story the rest of his life, and it's hard to find a flaw in Bijan Robinson in any form or fashion.
No doubt. I watched him at Big 12 Media Days one of the years, and he made everybody he came in contact with feel better about themselves than they probably needed to that day. And that's just what he does. It's just, it was impressive. So that's cool to hear about Simon. And I enjoyed watching the highlights, Jason, of James Simon. You bring up some interesting points. It's like, the way I would describe it is, it just feels like there's a controlled power and controlled speed. Sometimes he doesn't need all of his speed, but if he needs a little more, he's got it. And if he needed a little more power, he's got it. And maybe it is the level. Maybe we'll need to see it go to that next level. And is it really about the high school level he was playing against? But I felt like at times I was watching a bunch of dudes that did not know and one guy that did. And it was Simon. Like, he just had this confidence about him where it was kind of like, oh, y'all didn't know this was going to end with an 85-yard touchdown? I'm sorry. I should have written it down for you back there, and you wouldn't have had to chase me.
Yeah. And I know you're standing on the 1-yard line defender, and I got a head of steam, but I'm going to go ahead and truck you into the end zone anyway.
Right. So, yeah, not afraid of contact.
Right.
Not afraid to cut inside instead of outside, as Jeff Ketchum said earlier today. I thought that was a good way to say it, too. James Simon is a fun running back to watch. Go check out that footage if you're a Texas fan and you haven't seen it. He is the latest commit in the Texas class, and that makes it 10 in the 2025 class for Texas. We do have a couple other chats that we'll get to before we finish off. But, Jason, back to the list of the official visits for the weekend. I think we left off with those offensive linemen that are headed to Missouri this weekend. What name might pop up next for you? There's a lot of big ones still left.
Yeah, there are. And this is one that I think this is a big, big visit. Okay. And it's John Mills. He's offensive lineman out of San Francisco. I've got my future cast in for Texas. He's visiting Washington this weekend. He's got some ties to Washington and his family. I obviously think it's going to be Texas, but I think Washington is the biggest threat there. So he's taking his official visit to Washington this weekend. He was at Cal last weekend. He's got Nebraska, I think, and maybe one other one. Then he'll visit Texas. So, I think Texas is a team to beat, but we'll see. This Washington visit could be a little tricky coming into this weekend.
That is an interesting one, yeah. Another name I know we've talked a lot about is Keody Armstrong, the talented tight end. He is not going to be at Texas, but he is going to be in SEC country.
Yeah, he's supposed to be at Auburn per the database, and I need to hit up Keody. That's just kind of out of the blue, man. But Keody's pretty open. I still think that one comes down to Texas and Texas A&M. If he ends up visiting Auburn this weekend as scheduled, I'd just be mildly surprised to see that one move the needle too much. I mean, I think Keody's probably going to be a guy that stays closer to home. Like Ty Anthony Smith came down to Texas and Texas A&M. I know USC was involved with Ty Anthony there for a bit, but I think Keody's probably going to be an in-state guy. So I think that's when, if you're a Texas fan, we'll pay attention to it, right? As Orange Bloods guys, we'll pay attention to it. We'll see what he says coming out of that visit. But I don't think that one will move the needle too much.
Jason, I know Ketch has gushed about Armstrong for a while now and how much he likes him. How much do you like Armstrong as a prospect? How important a battle is that for you for Texas to win?
Well, it's important because they've got one tight end committed, but they need, a second one. And it's been a while since Texas, Gunnar Helm's going to is a good player. And I think he's going to turn out to be a really good player for Texas, but Texas hasn't been able to secure these really highly rated tight ends, the true elite guys. I know Ketch says Keody might be the best since Martellus Bennett. I'm not quite that high on him. I don't think he's quite the explosive athlete that a guy like Martellus Bennett was. But he's such a big physical presence. I mean, the dude looks like he's 30 years old right now. I mean, he's just an intimidating player. And you think about how his body projects. You're like, man, that guy, he's already a grown man among boys. But even at the college level, he's going to be a grown man. And a lot of his plays are just kind of high pointing the ball and just being bigger than than the guys trying to cover him. So, I do think he's going to have to kind of fine tune his game a little bit more at the next level in terms of his route running and work on some explosiveness in terms of that type of stuff. But be a fantastic pickup, whoever gets him. And again, I think it ultimately probably comes down to Texas and Texas A&M.
So again, Armstrong will be reportedly going to Auburn this week for an official visit. Jason, did you mention Jonah Williams earlier?
I did not, no. And I'm doing like 10 things at once. I'm sorry. Jonah is going to be at Southern Cal this weekend. Again, he likes Southern Cal a lot. I still think A&M's there, Oklahoma. He doesn't have a Texas official visit. So, he really likes Oregon. Don't sleep on Oregon. Texas might be able to get him on campus, but that's a big visit just because he's such an elite player. He's a 5-star player, but I don't think he's a guy that he's probably down this list in terms of, if I was ranking all these guys we've talked about, top to bottom, the odds of them winding up at Texas, he'd be towards the bottom of that list. But again, it's a visit we'll be paying attention to. We'll see if he's going to wind up visiting Texas at any point.
So, Jason, this is going to come off as a question from a total SEC mark. I understand that going in, but it just reminded me as you're talking about a guy that's taken a West Coast visit. It's a guy from a Texas school, but going West Coast. One of our chatters today in an earlier show was asking about the kids out in Cali, the West Coast kids, and the idea that they don't want to be in the Big Ten. That was just their theory of they wouldn't think that a California kid would want to be in the Big Ten. I totally get why any kid would want to be in the SEC. Have you gotten any sense yet for the kids that are considering those 4 schools out west? And if they really do consider the Big Ten thing a big deal, the idea of playing Ohio State and Michigan in conference and, being a part of that whole thing, do you sense that it's a big deal like maybe it is, in our region?
You know what? I haven't heard anybody specifically mention it, and I've never asked. And you're right. That's such a foreign territory to them, right? The SEC for Texas kind of feels a little natural because A&M's been there and they've kind of set the precedent there a little bit. So,
right.
But you know what? It may seem awkward to those guys right now, but listen, 1 or 2 years from now when, Oregon and USC are playing Michigan and Ohio State and those are going to be fun, exciting games, and they'll be thrilled to be a part of that conference. But it's not quite as natural a fit as maybe Texas and Texas A&M going to the SEC. It doesn't seem like. So I can see why people would speculate that, but I have not heard that from other players. So.
Yeah, because it would be an interesting move, not just to focus in on Jonah, but I'm just thinking of him. And Jonah Williams is it Jasper? No,
Jonah Williams, Galveston Ball.
Galveston Ball. I'm sorry.
Keady's at Jasper.
Yes, right. We were just talking about him. Okay. So, you're a guy that goes to school at Galveston Ball and you go visit USC. You end up going out to USC, then you end up, then you're completely away from all the, kind of the discussion of your home state and all of that. It just feels like an interesting discussion for those kids. We'll continue to watch, obviously, what Lincoln Riley's doing out there and what all 4 of those teams are doing in a new Big Ten. Because I think you're right, Jason. In a few years, let's face it, when USC hosts Ohio State in a regular season game, when Michigan hosts Oregon, that's going to be really cool. And I'm sure that'll, appeal to the kids too. Let's see. What other names do we need to be mentioning here, Jason? We've hit a lot of these. We didn't mention Kelshawn Johnson earlier, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wide receiver out of Hitchcock. Speaking of USC, I think it's going to be Texas or USC. A&M's trying to work in there a little bit too, though, so we got to keep an eye on the Aggies. I think Texas is the clear leader there. I've got my future cast pick in on Texas, I think. I hope so. If not, I should. But he will visit Arkansas this week. I'd be a little surprised. Again, Arkansas will impress him, and he'll enjoy it. These kids all enjoy their official visits for the most part. But I still think it's going to be Texas and USC, 1 and 1A, with A&M having a slight chance to make a late surge there for Kelshawn Johnson. But he'll be in, I'm pretty sure he's on the 21st. I don't have him pulled up, but I'm pretty sure his official visit to Texas is on the 21st.
Gotcha. And let's see. I'm sure the other names. A couple guys going to Miami on the defensive side this weekend.
Yeah, Aiden Anding, who's a defensive back out of Louisiana, and then Smith Orogbo out of Hastings down in Alief Hastings, Houston Hastings, whatever you want to call it now. But both those dudes will be at Miami. So, Aiden Anding is a guy that honestly, like, he hasn't been discussed enough, and maybe that's my fault. Maybe I need to be writing on him more, but he's a guy that I really think might wind up being in this class. I mean, if you're coming in as a defensive back into the University of Texas right now, they just took a huge class last year. They've taken some portal guys. You've got to have confidence, okay? Well, Aiden Anding, whatever it is that they put in that water in Louisiana, those dudes are pretty confident. Aiden Anding kind of has that similar mold. So I think Texas has a real shot there, but he'll visit Miami this weekend. Smith Arogbo is a little bit of a tougher one to read. He doesn't give a lot of details. I know grades are going to be important. Academics are going to be important to him. I think it might be a situation where he stays a little closer to home. Like, let me look where he's got Oklahoma. He's got Texas Tech. He's got Arizona State in there that he already took way back when. Well, I'm seeing Smith is listed as a Missouri visitor this weekend. So I don't know what's going on there. He's visited Oklahoma State, Texas, Washington. This guy's kind of been all over the place. And every time I ask him, his visits are constantly morphing. And this one's out and this one's in and this date's changed. So I need to follow up with him, but to see if he's actually visiting. No, I'm sorry. Hey, I've got Hayden Lowe. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm getting my two guys confused. I'm sorry. Well, let me circle back. Smith Arogbo is visiting Missouri this weekend with the two offensive linemen. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Hayden Lowe is the defensive lineman. He's out of California. I talked to someone about him last week. He is visiting Miami, which I thought was interesting because I talked to a Cali source last week, and they're like, yeah, that dude's probably going to stay home, like out in the West Coast, like Oregon, somewhere in California. But then I'm like, but he's visiting Miami. He's visiting Texas, right? So I don't know if that necessarily applies. Or I'm sorry, I merged my two defensive linemen there together for a second. But yeah, Hayden Lowe is the defensive lineman out of Cali visiting Miami. I don't know that Texas is going to be a major factor in that one, the way they might be with Aiden Anding, the defensive back I mentioned. But he is going to take a Texas official visit. So that tells me he at least has some level of interest.
Gotcha. All right, Jason, we've been over, I think, a lot of this list. Maybe it's all of it. Did I miss anybody?
No, there's a couple others like that are kind of fringe players for Texas, but the guys that we kind of talked about are the main priority targets for Texas.
Yeah, definitely some names you want to keep track of. Big targets for Texas. They'll be coming in more than likely on the 14th or the 21st of June, but this weekend headed to some other places. So obviously we will be, keeping you updated. And of course, Jason will be keeping you updated with the very latest at orangebloods.com. We're going to get to some chats before we get out of here. Also, we're going to remind you at orangebloods.com that Q&A article is up from Jason, answering all your questions, all the questions that gets thrown to him. He puts it together in an article every once in a while to give you some thoughts on what's out there. Jason, we're just going to pick a little snippet from your Q&A because it was a guy that I know we've talked about a little bit. Someone asked you, among other things, about your most underrated player in this class, and you brought up a guy that is a Texas commit, and as of today, has a little bit of a higher stature. Give us an update.
Yeah, it's funny. I wrote that column last night, and they released their updated rankings today. And I said, hey, Lance Jackson, he was a 4-star player. He was a Rivals 250 player, but he was 128, so he's outside the Rivals 100. To me, he should be in the top half of that Rivals 100. I think he's a top 50-ish type player, maybe top 30-ish. I don't know. We'll see how his senior season progresses. But I said, I don't get his rankings. I don't like to bash on rankings. I know they're subjective, but sometimes we just have a difference of opinion. I said, Lance Jackson to me is a guy that is just significantly underranked, and I don't understand why. Well, lo and behold, the rankings come out today. He goes from 128 to 82, so he made a pretty big jump. Almost 46 spots or whatever. So. And I think with a strong senior season, he could continue to climb that ranking. So I'm glad to see that he's actually in the Rivals 100. It's a small thing, but to say, hey, I'm a Rivals 100 member versus a Rivals 250, it's a little feather in his cap. So I think it's justified. I think it's deserved. And I think he may continue to move up the rankings if he has the kind of senior season I'm expecting him to.
So check out that Q&A article at orangebloods.com. Also, remember, Anwar Richardson is in Destin, Florida. Poor guy.
Yeah. Look at us. Yeah.
Oh, man. Poor dude. He says this makes up for all those times he had to go to Lubbock. The SEC spring meetings. If you missed Sark in front of all those SEC logos yesterday, you can check out Anwar's full breakdown of it. If you've missed the press conference itself, you can check that out as well at orangebloods.com. And we are recording this on a Wednesday, of course, which means Thursday is coming up, and Thursday night is War Room night at orangebloods.com, the very latest in recruiting and everything else as we get closer to Texas football. Under 100 days until kickoff, and I think we're at about 33 days as we record it until Texas officially becomes an SEC team. And by the way, if that is of interest to you, there was a big announcement made today about the schedule for June 30th. Big events planned for Sunday, June 30th, when Texas is about to officially become an SEC team. There's a 9-hour celebration down on campus. Jason, they're painting streets, with stuff. Yeah. The SEC logo is going in the stadium, and there's going to be a big party. There's going to be fireworks at the end of the night to celebrate. Apparently, SEC brass is coming to town, including the commissioner, Sankey, and others. SEC Network will broadcast from UT. Like, it's going to be a big day, June 30th. So if you're going to be in or around Austin and you want to make some plans, might be a good day to hang out and celebrate the SEC for Texas. And you can get some burnt orange SEC gear for the first time ever.
Yeah, they're going to try to blow that out. I think I'll probably just watch from my couch on that day. So
yeah, well, you can do that.
That's a long month of June of covering official visits.
I was going to say, by that weekend, you're not going to be able to move. You are going to be passed out somewhere. I do know that. All right, so we got you all updated there. Check out.
Oh, gosh, Chad, you know what? That's not right. Wait a second. You know what?
What? No?
Let me see. Let me look. That's the state 7-on-7 weekend. So I got all these damn official visits. And then I fly to Jacksonville on the 24th of June because that's dead period. And I go cover the 5-Star Challenge and the Rivals Convention. And I'm hoping while I'm down in Jacksonville, so I'll be in Jacksonville till Friday. I'm like, you know what? Can I just chill down here for the weekend and enjoy Florida? And I'm hoping I don't have to fly back to cover the state 7-on-7 tournament. Like fly back home and then drive straight to College Station. So, so no, I will not be. I'll either be sitting somewhere in Jacksonville. Just there's got to be beaches in Jacksonville, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, whatever. I'll find something to do, or I'll be in College Station sweating it out at the state 7-on-7 tournament. So
okay, so that's on the state 7-on-7 is on the 30th as well, is what you're saying.
You know what? I take that back. Nope, I'm wrong again. It's the 27th, 28th, and 29th, but it is that weekend. Yeah.
See, there you go. You're back in time for the fireworks. No problem.
Somebody will post videos on Twitter, and I'll be just fine. Yeah.
There you go. All right, let's see. Before we get out of here, let's throw in a couple questions we got here. Somebody threw you a question earlier, Jason. Mark said, here's a question. What commitment articles have you written that you had to toss into the old round file later on?
Well, that's pretty smart because my trash can is actually round. I'm like, can he see that or what? But I was going to pick it up right behind me. But, Mark, it doesn't happen very often. Honestly, like once every couple of years. I usually don't write those until I'm really confident that a guy's coming to Texas. So I'm trying to think of the last one. And I can't remember. It's very few and far between that happens. So
see, there you go.
Now, there are times when guys commit. I tell you, this happens a lot more often. Guys commit out of the blue, and I don't have a commitment story written. So, it's not often when I write a Texas commitment story because I'm like, hey, dude, I don't want to put forth that effort and that time. I got other things I could be doing. So I don't really do it unless I'm pretty confident the guy's going to go to Texas.
All right. So this next couple, Jason, is somebody trying to get Devin Sanchez to Texas. Says, how do you guys feel about Devin Sanchez wanting to go to Ohio State more than Texas if Texas wins a national title? Do you think that's what they need to do to flip Devin Sanchez?
No, I don't think it matters. That dude is so locked in. I mean, he's 100% Ohio State and never really really, really early in his recruitment, he gave Texas a little bit of a look. I remember meeting him at a junior day type deal, or it was not a junior day, like a summer visit thing. But that was like maybe his summer after his freshman year, but he never really looked at Texas after that. So, yeah, I think you should probably give up on that dream, Casey.
Yeah, there you go. Thomas trying to put some things together here says if you land 2 of more French Lockett, it almost certainly means you don't hit the portal for wide receivers this offseason with guys like Jonte, Moore, Wingo, etc. returning will allow for more money elsewhere. Look at Thomas thinking like a modern college football fan.
Yeah. You can allocate that money towards other portal positions if you need to. But, yeah, I would agree with that. They had to go to the portal heavily this year, but assuming these young guys continue to progress the way, Jonte Cook and DeAndre Moore and Wingo and Parker Livingston and some of these Aaron Butler, assuming these guys continue to progress the way they look like they are, I don't think hitting the portal will be a necessity for wide receivers.
Yeah, Thomas, interesting chat there. Let's grab one more. Thomas also says Jackson is a beast. Agreed. All the services are starting to move him into the top 50. Has a good chance to be a 5-star. Jason, you think that's where it ends up for Lance Jackson?
5-star is tough, man, because it's hard. That's rarefied air, and then you got to bump somebody else out of 5-star. I think he has that kind of capabilities. I mean, I saw him at the Under Armour camps and the Rivals camp, and Jakeem Stewart, who's the ¡1 player in the country for next year, was there. And I'm like, those two didn't look that much different to me. So, I think he's got a chance. But if you're asking me to pick, I don't think he'll get there, but I do think he has a shot.
There you go. And finally, we'll throw in Teta's chat here because it took a little work and he put emojis in it. Heard Anwar was seen at the SEC meetings in Florida at the bar with Kirk Bowles drinking a fine cognac with a chaser of Aggie tears from the UT Regional Softball Series. Teta, I do not know exactly what Aggie tears taste like, but I guess it was mixed with a little softball dirt from the weekend. Thank you for that. That actually reminds me, as we get ready to close up here, to tell everybody about tonight's Outsider show at 8:30. We are going to talk some football, and we'll talk a little softball with the great Kat Osterman. She's going to jump on with us about 8:35. So right out of the chute, she's going to jump in because she's a starter. And we're going to ask her what it was like at McCombs. She was there in the crowd. I'm sure you saw it. And we'll get her thoughts on what she saw from Texas and what she thinks that we'll see at the College World Series from the softball team. And then we're going to talk some offensive line with Tillman Holloway, former teammate of Chance Mox, of course. They'll renew pleasantries, and we'll talk about offensive line stuff and future of college football, walk-on programs maybe going away, and all that kind of stuff tonight at 8:30 on The Outsiders. Jason, anything else we need to hit recruiting-wise here?
No, man, I think we've covered just about all of it and then some. It's been a pretty active show. Not a directly big weekend for Texas, but on the peripheral, a big weekend that we'll be watching closely this over the course of the weekend and see how some of these visits go.
Yep, definitely keep your eyes peeled on all of that. And as we always say, get over to orangebloods.com for the very latest. You never know. At some point, Alex Dunlap might tell you some of those 10 names that he threw out this week. He wouldn't exactly tell you who they were. That's going to be one of the next big questions for Texas soap opera football fans. Who are the 10 that Alex Dunlap referenced this week? Go to orangebloods.com and find out what the heck I am talking about. Also on orangebloods.com, Jason, there's a conversation going on between me and some of the Orange Bloods folks about the 12 years where A&M and Texas did not play football. I've been looking at the 12 years war this week. I'm breaking down 2018 to 2020. The time period where they both had a little bit of a spark and then ultimately, not much happened. But this week, if you want to jump in on that conversation, you can check that out at orangebloods.com as well. We appreciate you liking and subscribing and getting your notifications. Like we said, up to 19,100 and plus on those subscribers. We appreciate you helping us out. Thank you for your support. Until Monday at 4:00, that'll be your next recruiting hour. Y'all stay safe. He's Jason Sukamel. I'm Chad Hastings, and this is